1 week ago, the CCP issued a secret document outlining the strategy to counter Trump's tariff war. Yesterday, Chinese dissident Professor Yuan Hongbin, a former CCP insider now in exile, reviewed the details of this classified document. It was issued by the Politburo Standing Committee, and its contents are highly sensitive. So here's how secret it was. It said that from April 7th to 9th, so for 3 days, CCP officials at provincial, municipal, and county levels were summoned in waves to designated government secrecy rooms across China. Inside, they were allowed to read the document, under surveillance, of course. No copying, no phones, no cameras, no note taking. Nothing was allowed to leave the room, only memory. The CCP feared that if the content were leaked, the United States would discover Xi Jinping's strategic blueprint. However, some conscientious CCP insiders who read the document memorized the key points and passed them on to Professor Yuan, who made them public. The 7,000-word document is titled Win the Initiative in Historic Upheaval Through Decisive Struggle. It declares that the tariff war is not an isolated economic dispute, but the first battle in a total war launched by Trump, encompassing politics, economics, military force, and ideology. The leadership sees the tariff war as an opportunity to break the United States' global dominance and calls on the entire party, the entire military, and the nation to follow Xi Jinping's directives in this effort. So the document spells out 5 strategies. First is International United Front strategy. Top priority is to build a global united front, leveraging international frustration over Trump's trade war. Target countries are Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and China's neighboring countries. And if Trump refuses to back down, pull India and Vietnam and other swing nations into a coalition to isolate the United States. And the goal is to push the US out of the globalization process and end its economic dominance. And the United Front Work Department and Foreign Ministry must coordinate this effort. That's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is based on 2 major financial war plans. Plan 1, so financial war number 1, it targets Chinese political elites' foreign assets. So it says that the government must keep track of foreign bank deposits held by party officials and executives working for SOEs, state-owned enterprises, especially those exceeding $200,000. And it says, if full decoupling with the United States is triggered, funds must be immediately transferred out of the United States and back to China or other neutral countries. And this can be handled by family members of the officials. And then, listen to this, non-compliance would be treated as treason and punished harshly. So that's plan number 1 under this strategy number 2. Plan number 2, or financial war number 2, involves full financial decoupling readiness. So it says officials are asked to be thoroughly prepared on short notice to dump $1 trillion in U.S. Treasury bonds, and 2, sell $2 trillion in U.S. corporate equity and debt securities in the shortest amount of time possible when the government decides to do it. And the objective is to destabilize U.S. financial markets if needed. That's strategy number 2. Strategy number 3 is about domestic measures for a prolonged economic war with the United States. So it requires officials to strengthen China's ability to be economically self-reliant and enhance a domestic market circulation system. It's called 内循环. In response to Trump's national emergency declaration, Chinese officials at all levels must prepare for severe hardship and be ready to partially or fully restore government rationing system. The secret document refers to rationing as China's secret weapon in winning the economic war with the US. Strategy number 4 addresses international politics. So the document instructs the International Liaison Department and the Foreign Ministry to deepen strategic partnership with Russia, Iran, and North Korea, forming the political foundation to counter Trump's challenge. It also calls for strengthening CCP influence in Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand across political, military, economic, and cultural domains. Referencing Marxist idea that economic power shapes political power, it urges officials to exploit rising anger in Europe and Canada toward Trump's trade war to divide and weaken NATO, thereby undermining US global leadership. Simultaneously, the CCP aims to weaken US ties with Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, with the goal to push the US into economic isolation and losing its status as, quote unquote, the global police. The end goal is to bring down the 80-year American dominance that began after World War II. The last strategy is in the realm of military struggle, and this one involves Taiwan. The document asserts that if the economic war intensifies, a military confrontation becomes inevitable. The CCP must seize the initiative and choose the battlefield. And Xi Jinping believes a war in the Taiwan Strait gives China or will give China the geographical advantage because China will have a home court advantage. The document demands full implementation of Xi Jinping's strategic vision, which is to prepare for a military showdown with the United States in the Taiwan Strait. And in terms of Xi Jinping's war plan for the Taiwan Strait, according to the document, the war Xi Jinping envisions would be described as the following: a new type of conventional war fought under full spectrum information warfare, backed by a credible nuclear deterrent. And if the US intervenes, the plan is to destroy US military bases in Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and Guam, force US forces to retreat east of Hawaii, effectively reducing the US to a regional power rather than a Pacific hegemon. By the way, this description of the war matches with the doomsday scenario described by a retired US Army lieutenant colonel who was quoted in a military website called 1945. They published an article that predicts an imminent war within the next 6 months. And I mentioned it in my April 8th program. You can check it out. The resolution, the CCP's resolution or the secret document's final declaration is this. It says, only by bravely facing the storm can we achieve great victory. It concludes that by defeating Trump's total offensive, beginning with the tariff war, the CCP's vision of a community of common destiny will become the global path forward. So the above are key contents of the internal document as reconstructed from memory by Professor Yuan's contact. So let's talk about the reaction within the party and also Xi Jinping's biggest fear. So quoting insiders from within the regime, Professor Yuan said this: the CCP hoped this resolution would stabilize internal morale after the shock of Trump's tariff war. But the result was the opposite. Once the document was delivered through the strict classified procedure to officials at the county and division level and above, it didn't calm nerves. It was like pouring cold water into boiling oil. It sparked a wave of extreme anxiety throughout the bureaucracy. Professor Yuan's contact said that the new political whispers in Beijing have spread rapidly in Beijing's political circles. So the prevailing view is saying that Xi Jinping's so-called decisive great struggle against Trump may turn out to be his final unfinished project, a catastrophic failure. And once that fails, it may also mark the collapse of the party and the end of the regime. So why did Xi Jinping respond so aggressively to Trump's tariff war? The answer lies in Xi Jinping's biggest fear. According to Yuan's contact, it's because his think tanks convinced him that if he backs down on tariffs, the United States and its allies will reopen the investigation into China's role in the COVID pandemic. Push to charge the leadership or maybe Xi Jinping himself for crimes against humanity and demand economic reparations, right? That, insiders said, is Xi Jinping's biggest fear. Is that what you call the Achilles heel? So after all, it was Xi Jinping's personal directive in the early 2020 that delayed the public health responses in Wuhan, allowing the virus to spread across China, then the world. And that's the liability he fears most. So among China's economic and foreign policy technocrats, there is widespread skepticism and ridicule about Xi Jinping's strategy to build an international coalition, including Europe, Japan, Australia, to isolate the United States. Privately, many consider Xi Jinping's strategy delusional and out of touch with reality. These people, these technocrats, believe Xi Jinping's plan will become a historic embarrassment with no chance of success. At present, Beijing's political atmosphere is steeped in despair. Officials are quietly warning that Trump's tariff shockwave could lead to a tsunami of unemployment crisis by this summer. The growing whisper believes that Xi Jinping's final fallback strategy is to return to a Cultural Revolution style command economy, reviving a wartime supply rationing system, and ultimately launching a war against Taiwan as a last ditch effort to escape economic collapse. Reinstating state controlled rationing system would only lead to severe hardship and social decay, right? It could only aggravate the public's long suppressed fury. As for a war over Taiwan, these insiders say Xi Jinping's greatest danger would not come from the United States, but from within the PLA itself. According to a princeling familiar with internal military sentiment, many mid and high-ranking PLA officers are eagerly waiting for Xi Jinping to start a war, not to defend him, but to use the chaos as an opportunity to stage a coup. So they see a wartime scenario as their best chance to eliminate Xi. This, Professor Yuan concludes, is the real fallout triggered by that secret document.